She thought she knew him. For 7 years, Melissa believed her long-distance relationship with Daniel was built on love, trust, and honesty. But everything changed when she discovered the truth. A web of lies, betrayal, and secrets hidden in plain sight. This is the story of how one woman followed her instincts to uncover the truth about the man she thought she knew. Lies, secrets, and heartbreak. What she found will leave you speechless. What would you do if the person you loved most turned out to be a stranger? And how far would you go to uncover the truth? For 7 years, Melissa and Daniel had been a couple. Their relationship, though unconventional, was built on what Melissa believed was a strong foundation of trust and understanding. Melissa, a dedicated professional with a demanding 9-to-5 job, lived in her city, while Daniel, a writer with a flexible schedule, lived in another. They saw each other every few weeks, balancing their long-distance relationship with constant communication and shared location tracking, a system that gave Melissa comfort in the trust they had nurtured. But trust, as Melissa would come to learn, could be a fragile thing. Daniel had always been a man of words. From the beginning of their relationship, he spoke passionately about fidelity and the sacredness of trust. "Trust is everything," he had said. Melissa believed him, and for years there was no reason to doubt him. She admired his dedication to his craft and respected his independence, even when it meant they couldn't see each other as often as she'd like. But then small signs started to appear. It started with his trips to a specific city. He claimed to be researching for a book, but Melissa began to notice odd patterns. Sometimes, her texts went unanswered for hours, or her calls were dismissed with vague excuses about being in the zone with his writing. When she pressed him about his activities, he deflected, his charm disarming her doubts. "You'd be bored with the details," he'd say, smiling, before steering the conversation elsewhere. Melissa wanted to believe him. She loved him, but something in her gut told her there was more to the story. One evening, as Daniel prepared for another research trip, Melissa noticed his location on her phone. At first, it appeared he was at his usual hotel. But then the dot moved to a residential neighborhood. He was there all afternoon and into the night, ignoring her calls and texts. Melissa took a screenshot of his location and began to investigate. The address led her to a woman's profile on social media. She was younger than Melissa, with an air of intellectual sophistication that seemed to align with Daniel's interests. They were connected on social media, though Daniel rarely followed anyone. Digging deeper, Melissa discovered this woman's recent reading list on Goodreads, books that Daniel had recommended in their conversations. A sinking feeling settled in Melissa's chest. She wasn't ready to confront him yet, not without solid evidence. She decided to wait and observe. When Thanksgiving arrived, Daniel flew in to spend the holiday with Melissa. He was his usual self, affectionate, attentive, and seemingly devoted. Melissa decided to test him. "Is there anything you want to tell me?" she asked casually one evening, her heart pounding as she watched his face. Daniel looked at her, puzzled. "No." "Why?" Melissa tried steering the conversation toward their relationship, giving him every opportunity to come clean. But Daniel remained steadfast in his innocence, even expressing excitement about their future plans to live together once his youngest child went off to college. The next day, Melissa drove him to the airport. She watched him walk inside, her stomach twisting with unease. A hunch compelled her to check his location again. He didn't fly home as he'd said he would. Instead, his dot appeared in the same city, in the same residential neighborhood. Her hands trembling, Melissa sent him a text, "I know what you're doing." The following morning, Melissa made a bold decision. She found the woman's email address and wrote her a short, straightforward message. "Hi, I'm Melissa, Daniel's partner of 7 years. He left here yesterday and turned off his location when he landed. Is he with you?" Hours passed without a reply. Melissa's mind raced, and her body was overtaken by a full-blown panic attack. She couldn't breathe, her hands went numb, and her heart felt like it would burst out of her chest. For 2 days, she lived in that state of heightened anxiety, oscillating between anger and heartbreak. Finally, Daniel answered her calls, though his tone was far from apologetic. Instead of guilt, his voice was laced with anger, a sharp edge that caught Melissa off guard. "What were you thinking, contacting her like that?" he demanded, his voice rising. "You violated her privacy." Melissa felt the weight of his accusation, but she refused to let it shake her resolve. Her grip tightened on the phone as she steadied her breath. Despite the storm raging in her chest, her voice was calm, measured. "What's going on, Daniel?" she asked, each word carrying a quiet force. "What is your relationship with this woman?" Daniel hesitated, his silence stretching painfully across the line. For a moment, Melissa thought he might hang up, but then his voice returned, defensive and sharp. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, attempting to deflect. But Melissa wasn't letting him off the hook this time. "I saw where you were, Daniel," she pressed, her voice firm. "I've seen the patterns, the trips, the messages you didn't think I'd notice. I want the truth, and I'm not letting this go." Cornered, Daniel began to shift his tactics. He turned the conversation back on her, demanding, "What do you know? What exactly are you accusing me of?" Melissa didn't flinch. "You know what I'm talking about. Stop deflecting and just tell me the truth." It was like pulling teeth, but slowly, painfully, the truth began to leak out. Over the course of a grueling 2-hour conversation, Melissa pieced together the fragments of his confession. Daniel admitted to an affair that had been ongoing for at least 8 months. His voice was laced with self-pity as he tried to explain. "It wasn't supposed to happen," he said. "We were just friends at first, but then it got complicated. I was lonely, Melissa. I was unhappy." His words hit her like a physical blow, each syllable cutting deeper. Melissa's heart sank, but she kept her voice steady. "Unhappy?" she repeated, disbelief coloring her tone. "So you decided to betray me instead of talking to me about it?" Instead of apologizing, Daniel doubled down. His voice turned accusatory, filled with indignation. "You neglected me," he said, as if the blame rested solely on her shoulders. "You were always so busy with work, with everything else. I didn't know how to stop it." Melissa stared at the floor, her hands trembling as she gripped the phone tighter. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The man who had once spoken so passionately about trust and fidelity was now justifying his betrayal, twisting the narrative to suit his guilt. "I neglected you?" Melissa said, her voice low and trembling with restrained emotion. "Do you even hear yourself right now, Daniel? You made a choice to lie, to cheat, and to hide it for months. Don't you dare try to put this on me." Daniel said nothing for a moment, the silence deafening. But the damage was already done. Melissa could feel the weight of his words pressing down on her, the realization settling in. The man she thought she knew, the man she trusted for 7 years, was gone. He had been gone for a long time. Over the next few weeks, Daniel didn't give up. He begged Melissa to stay and kept insisting they could fix things. He called the affair a mistake, something he deeply regretted. He suggested they could try couples therapy, saying it would help them rebuild their relationship. Melissa wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe that the man she had loved for 7 years was still worth fighting for. But deep down, something didn't feel right. As she tried to make sense of everything, she started to dig deeper into his behavior, piecing things together from the clues he had left behind. The more she looked, the more lies she uncovered. Daniel's memory, conveniently, seemed to fail whenever Melissa asked him for details. She found out that he had flown the other woman to meet him in different cities, places he had told Melissa he was visiting for work or research. Even worse, she discovered that he had taken the woman on a trip to Europe, a trip Melissa had thought was part of his solo writing process. The betrayal stung even more when Melissa realized just how much effort Daniel had put into hiding his affair. She found out that he had a second phone, one he used to communicate with the other woman. Melissa had never seen it before, never even suspected it existed. Despite his claims that the relationship was over, Melissa learned that Daniel was still in regular contact with the woman. He called her and texted her every few days, keeping their connection alive. When Melissa confronted him again, Daniel became defensive. His tone was sharp, almost as if he were the one who had been wronged. "She's just a friend now," he argued, his voice rising in frustration. "I'm allowed to have friends, Melissa. You can't tell me who I'm allowed to talk to." Melissa felt her anger bubbling up, but she kept her composure. "This isn't just a friend, Daniel," she said firmly. "This was a relationship that you built on lies. You lied to me, to her, to yourself. I'm not asking you to cut off a friend. I'm asking you to end an affair. If you can't end it with her, then you're ending it with me." Daniel hesitated but eventually promised that he would cut ties with the other woman. Yet Melissa couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't being honest. His words sounded hollow, like he was saying what he thought she wanted to hear, not what he actually meant. Desperate for answers, Melissa did something she never thought she'd do. She remembered that Daniel had given her his email passwords years ago, back when their relationship was built on trust. She logged in, her hands trembling as she searched for the truth she knew was hiding there. What she found shattered her completely. Emails revealed that Daniel had lied to both of them. The other woman hadn't even known Melissa existed until she received that email. Daniel had painted himself as a single man, free to pursue a new relationship. He had carefully planned their trips, booking flights and hotels to ensure no one would find out. Even after Melissa caught him, he had continued to stay in contact with the woman, sending her messages that hinted at their future together. Melissa discovered that Daniel had told the other woman lies about her, too. He described Melissa as unstable and said their relationship was rocky, planting seeds to make the other woman believe she was the better choice. It was all part of Daniel's plan to keep his options open, to set the stage for a potential return to the other woman if things didn't work out with Melissa. This was the final betrayal. Melissa knew she could never trust him again. She had tried to salvage their relationship, to believe his words, but his actions told a different story. Daniel had been lying from the start, and now Melissa could see him for who he truly was. Melissa's mind was made up. She couldn't allow Daniel to keep twisting the truth or playing games with her emotions. She deserved better. With a heavy heart, she made the decision to cut him out of her life completely. She blocked his number, unfollowed him on social media, and deleted every trace of him from her phone. She even removed pictures and messages that once brought her joy because now they only served as painful reminders of his betrayal. Melissa knew that holding on to anything connected to him would only make it harder to move forward. The first few days were tough. Her heart ached, and her mind replayed every moment of their relationship, every sign she had missed. There were moments she felt like calling him, hoping for an apology or explanation that would make it all make sense. But deep down, she knew the truth. There was nothing Daniel could say to undo the damage he had caused. So instead of waiting for closure from him, Melissa focused on creating her own. She threw herself into activities she had always wanted to try but never made time for. She started journaling, pouring her emotions onto the page, letting the weight of her pain leave her mind and settle on the paper. Slowly, she began reconnecting with friends and family she had unintentionally drifted away from during her relationship. Their support reminded her of the love and strength that still surrounded her. Melissa's heart still felt heavy, but she could feel her resolve growing stronger each day. She realized that she had spent so much time trying to understand Daniel's actions, trying to fix a relationship that he had already broken. But now she was ready to let it go. For the first time in years, Melissa felt free to focus on herself, to rebuild her life on her own terms. She didn't need Daniel to write her story anymore. This time, the pen was in her hands, and she was determined to create something beautiful, something worthy of the strength she had found within herself.